Okay, guys, so we're going to work through the Factoring Trinomials Notes Part 1. There's a couple of ways you can do this. I have attached a blank copy of this. I scanned it and attached a copy. So if you have access to a printer, you can print it out first and then watch the video. Or if you want, you can just write it down as you go if you just have paper and pencil. And then don't forget, you can always just pause the video to catch up because I already have it all written out for the most part. So before we get into factoring trinomials, I want to review diamond problems. And I know that y'all have seen so much of this that you're probably really tired of hearing about it. But there are several different types of diamond problems. And we're going to need to use this. We're going to need to be able to do this when we are factoring trinomials. Okay, so I want to look at these 4 different diamond problems. The first one, I have a 21 on top and a 10 on the bottom. I know that the top is my product and the bottom is my sum. So I need 2 numbers who multiply together to give me 21, but add up to give me 10. Okay, so if I look at all my factors of 21, I've got 1 times 21 and 3 times 7, and that's it. Okay, so it can either be a 1 and a 21 or a 3 and a 7, but I need those to also add up to 10. Well, 1 plus 21 doesn't equal 10, but 3 plus 7 does equal 10. So 3 and 7 are the numbers that I need for my diamond, because 3 times 7 is 21 and 3 plus 7 is 10. Okay. Now, if we look over here to the right, this is a similar problem, but what you'll notice is that the bottom number, the sum, is negative. Okay, but the product is still positive. Well, there are other numbers we could add together to get 21. Okay, because we know that a negative times a negative is a positive. So we could also have, let's use green, negative 1 times negative 21, or negative 3 times negative 7. Okay, we didn't need to talk about those numbers over here because my product and my sum were both positive, so everything was going to be positive. But now, if I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 21, but add together to give me negative 10, those are here, negative 3 and negative 7. Okay, so we have negative 3 times negative 7 is positive 21, but negative 3 plus negative 7 is negative 10. And absolutely, guys, you may use your calculator on these, okay? Even if it's just the calculator on your phone or just a simple 4-function calculator, definitely it's okay to use the calculator while you are working through these diamond problems. Okay, so now you see some similarity here. We've got these 2 diamond problems. If I look here, my product is a negative 21, okay? Well, the way I get a product of a negative is by multiplying a negative times a positive. So now, my possible combinations to get negative 21 would be 1 times negative 21, 3 times negative 7, or we could use negative 1 times positive 21, negative 3 times positive 7. Okay? So, what we have to remember is, and if you do this on your calculator, then you don't have to worry too much about it, but when we are adding a positive and a negative, we actually end up subtracting. Okay? So, 1 plus negative 21 gives us negative 20. 3 plus negative 7 gives us negative 4. Okay? We subtract them and then keep the sign of the bigger number. So 21 minus 1 is 20, and since the bigger number was negative, the sum is negative. 3 and 7, if we subtract them, we get 4, but because the negative was bigger, the answer is negative. So over here, it's going to be the opposite. Negative 1 and 20 is going to give us negative 1 plus 21 is going to give us positive 20 because the positive number was bigger. And negative 3 plus 7 is going to give us positive 4 because the positive number was bigger. Okay, so now to fill in our diamond, we have a product of negative 21, but a sum of negative 4. That's going to be 3 times negative 7. Okay, so product of negative 21 and a sum of positive 4 is going to be negative 3 and 7. Okay, so what you're going to notice is if your top and bottom numbers are both positive, both of your factors are positive. If your top is positive but your bottom is negative, both of your factors are going to be negative. If your top number, your product is negative, and your sum is negative, then that means the signs are different, but the bigger one is negative. And over here, if it's a negative with a positive sum, then your bigger number is going to have to be positive. Okay. So like I said, I know that's kind of a lot at one time. Feel free to pause the video, catch up with the notes, send me a message if you have any questions. Okay. And now I'm going to move on to the next piece of the notes. Before we talk about factoring a trinomial, okay, I want to kind of go the opposite direction. I want to look at what happens when you multiply binomials, because multiplying binomials, this is actually what our answers are going to look like with these types of problems. So when we multiplied binomials, for most of you, I just had you doing distributing or doing FOIL. X times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, so we distributed everything. We multiplied all of our terms. But now, if we can, we have to combine like terms. And what happens almost every time is you're going to end up with two like terms right here in the middle. And we're going to add those together. Okay, 5x plus 2x is 7x. And then we bring down the first term and the last term. And that was our answer. Okay, so what we worked on up until this point was going from here to here, which is simplifying. Okay, but now we're going to factor, which is taking the trinomial and putting it back in this form. This is factoring. And that's what we're working on today. Okay, we've done a little bit of factoring already. We factored out the GCF. Last week, if you did that lesson, we factored the difference of squares. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to factor trinomials. So the factors, the trinomials that we're going to see in this video for this part 1 of the notes are in the form x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so we're only dealing with trinomials that just start with x squared with a coefficient of 1 in the front. Okay, so in order to factor a trinomial like this, we must find two integers that add up to b, but multiply to give us c. Okay, so that's the rule on how we factor trinomials, but I think that'll make a little more sense when we actually apply it to a couple of examples. Okay, so example 1, we are going to factor n squared plus 9n plus 20. Okay, so our b is 9 and our c is 20. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a diamond problem. And I'm going to take my c, the term by itself here, 20, that's going to go on the top. And then the b is going to go on the bottom. Okay. So again, we put our last term, our c went on top, and our b went on the bottom. And now we're doing a diamond problem. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us 20, but add up to 9. Okay. And those two numbers are going to be 4 times 5. Okay. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay. So once we have those numbers, what we're going to do is we're going to make two binomials. Our variable is n, so that's going to be n plus 4 because that's a positive 4, and n plus 5. And that's our answer. Okay. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I know if I did that right? Well, if you wanted to check it, you could multiply n plus 4 times n plus 5 And if I distribute, combine like terms, I get n squared plus 9n plus 20, which is exactly what I started with. So we know we did that right. Okay. So again, we took our trinomial, we put the C in the top of our diamond, we put the B in the bottom of our diamond, and then once we found our factors, we just put those in to binomials, and that's our factored form. Okay. And this is one of those things that might seem complicated in the beginning, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. Okay. And this is where I really want to say, any questions? I know you can't really ask me a question, but if you're confused, stop the video, send me a message, check in on one of my Zoom videos, and we will get you straightened out. Let's try another one. Okay. So again, we're going to use a diamond. Our C goes in the top, and our B goes on the bottom. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us 24, but add up to give us 10. Okay. So my numbers are going to be 4 and 6, because 4 times 6 is 24, 4 plus 6 is 10. And again, if you're wondering where I get those numbers from, I know some of you just see them in your head right away, okay? But if not, go down the list and say, okay, 24 divided by 1 is 24. 24 divided by 2 is 12. 24 divided by 3 is 8. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And 5 doesn't go into 24. Okay, so we can stop right there. So this is how I get all my combinations. And then if I add those together, 1 plus 24 is 25. 2 plus 12 is 14. 8, 9, 10, 11. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so this is how I know that 4 and 6 are the numbers that I need. Okay, so now that I know my factors are 4 and 6, my factored form is just going to be x plus 4 times x plus 6. And that's it for example 2. All right. Now, what I would suggest at this point, if you're working from home, stop the video, try example 3, and then start the video again and see if your work looks the same as mine does. So again, I start with a diamond. I have a 1 on top and a 2 on bottom. And this is one that in class always seems to throw people off because they're thinking, well, I can't multiply anything to get 1. But actually you can. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So our factored form looks like this. X plus 1 times x plus 1. Okay. Now, there is one other way you can write that, because we are multiplying x plus 1 times itself. So you could also show it as x plus 1 quantity squared. Both of these would be correct. I would count this correct, and I would count this correct. So either one works. Okay. All right. So I think I have 3 more examples. Okay, 3 more examples for part 1. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the notes, some of our diamond problems dealt with negatives. So I wanted to make sure we look at some where we have to deal with negatives. So if you look at example 4, it says factor x squared plus 3x minus 18. I'm going to start them the same way. This minus 18 goes in the top. So I have negative 18 on top, 3 on bottom. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 18, but add up to give me 3. So since my product is negative, I know that I need a positive and a negative factor. Okay, so factors of 18 would be 1 times 18, 2 times 9, or 3 times 6. Okay. But I know that one has to be negative and one has to be positive. Well, since my sum is positive, I know the bigger numbers are going to be positive. So this is going to be negative 1, 18, negative 2, 9, or negative 3, 6. So I have to ask myself, which ones would I add together and get negative 3? So that's this combination right here. Negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. Negative 3 plus 6 is 3. So the only difference now with how I write my form is just don't forget that sign right there. That's a negative 3, so my factored form is going to be x minus 3 times x plus 6. Okay. It's important that you take your time when you're dealing with negatives. If everything is positive, you can probably roll through them pretty quick in your head, but be careful when you have signs because it's pretty easy to get them mixed up. And it does matter where you put your positive and where you put your negative. It would change the answer. Okay. 2 more examples and then we're done with part 1. Now let's go up here. Okay. So we're looking for factors of 24 with the sum of negative 11. Okay. Since my product is positive and my sum is negative, then I know that what I need is 2 negative numbers. Okay. So negative factors of 24 would be negative 1 times negative 24, negative 2 times negative 12, negative 3 times negative 8, or negative 4 times negative 6. All of those would multiply together to give me positive 24. But the one that gives me a sum of negative 11 is 8, 9, 10, 11, is right here. Negative 3, negative 8. So my answer is x minus 3 times x minus 8. Okay. And if you haven't already shut off the video or fallen asleep, let's do one more example. Example 6, factor x squared minus 2x minus 3. So I need factors of negative 3 with a sum of negative 2. Okay. So now the product is negative, so I know my factors are going to be one positive and one negative. But the sum is a negative, so the bigger number is going to have to be my negative. Okay. Well, with 3, the only numbers I can multiply together to get 3 are 1 and 3. So to get negative 3, it's either going to be a negative 1 times 3 or 1 times negative 3. And since my sum is negative, that means my negative has to be the bigger number. So this is going to be 1 and negative 3. So factored form is x plus 1, x minus 3. Now, I forgot to mention earlier that if you wrote it in the opposite order, let's say you wrote your diamond like this. That's perfectly fine. Okay, if you have the negative 3 on the left and the positive 1 on the right, that's totally fine. And you can even write your answer x minus 3, x plus 1. Okay, it's okay if those are switched. But the important thing to remember is that my 1 is positive, so it has to be a plus 1. And my 3 is negative, so it has to be a minus 3. Okay, so what I would like you to do is go back through this video if you need to. I posted a worksheet that's called Factoring Trinomials Part 1 Practice. Go through and do that before you try the Part 2 video. Okay, I think that it would benefit you to just forget about the Part 2 for now. Work through the practice for the Part 1 notes, and then do the quizzes for Part 1. And then once you're all done with Part 1 and you've reached out to me if you had any questions, then go back and try the Part 2. I think it'll probably work better that way. Let me know what you guys need if you need some more examples, or if you want me to find a link to a video with another teacher who maybe explains it a little bit differently. That will not hurt my feelings, I promise. Let me know what y'all need, and I will talk to you soon.